Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop my kid off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. I hope that you're having a pleasant day. It is a mediocrely crummy day here in suburban Chicago. The weather is partly to mostly cloudy, the little hint of the sun shining through. And I'm getting ready for my trip across the ocean to Iceland. As I've mentioned a couple times, I'll be gone for the next few days on a trip to Iceland, where I'm very excited to tour around and take lots of pictures and hit up a game shop or two in Reykjavik, which I hear the games are extra expensive. So hopefully I could find something in Iceland for Icelanders, or made by Icelanders. That would be a fun way to get a souvenir from the trip. So that's kind of my goal of the game shop there. To find something I wouldn't easily find here. So that's what I'll be doing. And in prep for that, I've been pre-recording episodes, and of course the episode I'm recording today would be the best one to release today, because it's about what games I'm going to bring on my trip. But instead I'm releasing it next week because I've already recorded and edited and labeled and uploaded and everything the other episodes, the ones you've already listened to that I recorded before this but aren't specifically time sensitive. So this is the weird thing of it will actually be released to you, the public, after I get back probably, or close to it, and it's about the games I'm going to take. So no chance for your commentary on it, but I look forward, at least in terms of advice of what to take. So, as with many gamers, I am in the situation of trying to figure out what games I want to bring with me on a trip across the sea. Of course, my space is very limited, and for a trip this short, we're not checking bags, so I just have one of those wheelie bags in my backpack, which means that my game content needs to be pretty limited. I'm probably stuck with just a few games. Now to be something small. Generally what I try to do is I pick 1 gallon-sized plastic bag, and I'm allowed to bring enough games that I can fit them in there, and that's it. So usually what I'll do is I take all the games out of their boxes and I shove all the components into sandwich-sized bags or quart-sized bags, and then put them all inside a big gallon-sized plastic bag. That's also helpful for when you're going through airport security. I find if you put the gallon-sized plastic bag in one of those separate things, it helps, because card games and stuff look weird in the X-ray scanner, or so I'm told. So all that said, here are the games I'm thinking of bringing. I picked out, first I had 2 that I imagined I might bring and then decided not to, and that was Welcome To and London. Now both these are card-based games with very limited other components. London has a few tokens and stuff that would easily fit in a small bag. The biggest thing is it's board, but you really don't even need the board. You could just use a grid of cards on the table. 6 cards would be enough. The hard part would be remembering the scoring, but also that's a game that takes like an hour and a half to play, and I don't expect that we're going to have the time or energy to play a game of that caliber, particularly one where I've had to pull all so we're not using the nice components and everything, we're using sort of minimal stuff. So I suspect that even if I brought London, it wouldn't get played, so that one's not coming along. The other one I was thinking about was Welcome To, but that one's got 3 full decks of cards, and it's got the score pads. So it actually is fairly bulky, despite the box itself not being that big. But in terms of what comes in the game and what you need to play it, it's actually fairly bulky. So I think we're not probably going to bring Welcome To. But I picked out 5, 6, 7 games that I'm thinking about bringing, and I just thought of an 8th as well, so I'll run through these. My 2 stalwart take-along games are Onirim and Friday. Onirim is particularly good for airplane play because you can easily play it on an airplane tray table. It's quiet. If you overhand shuffle instead of riffle shuffle, it's almost silent. So it's fine for nighttime play if you're playing when other people are trying to sleep or something. It's not intrusive, and it's played on a very small footprint. So Onirim is almost always a constant. The other one that I often bring is Friday. Friday is another really good small box game it's got a couple little boards, but really doesn't take up very much room at all. I will often bring Friday and Onirim in the same box. I think I'll put Onirim in the Friday box, or vice versa, and that usually works just fine. So those are 2 solo games that I usually bring. I'm not sure I will bring both this time. We'll have to see what I feel like. Here's the other 5 I'm considering. 2, 3, 4 of them are good to play with my wife. They all play in a half an hour or less. They're all relatively light, so all of these would be good choices, I think, for bringing along to play with Jen. The first is Quicks. This is a game I picked up at Goodwill, but definitely worth getting for $2, even $10. I talked about it a while back on the show, but it's a very simple roll and write, but a really small footprint. The box itself is just a little bit bigger than a box of cards. I'll take the stuff out of the box and it'll be even smaller. So that's Quicks. Pulp Detective is a dice game by Todd Sanders. It's heavily luck dependent, so really you win or lose just by rolling well or not. But it's got some interesting components, and it's a game that I've tried a couple times but haven't really felt my way around very much. So it seems like an excellent game to play while I am sitting on an airplane. My main concern there actually would be what I'm going to roll the dice into. Rolling dice on a tray table is not ideal. Rolling dice in a box cover is fine, but then I have to bring a box cover, which isn't ideal. But I may bring the Pulp Detective box because it's really good as a rolling surface. Alternately, I may bring the 8-Minute Empire Legends box. That one's a little bigger. 8-Minute Empire Legends is another very small footprint game. That one you couldn't play on a tray table though, because it does have a couple boards. But simple to play, easy to play in like a hotel room when you have 10 minutes. You could even play it on a bed. And interesting decisions to be had. So 8-Minute Empire Legends will definitely come along. Crypt, from my friends at Road to Infamy Games, R2I Games. Crypt is about, it's kind of a push your luck game in which you're trying to do some simple set collection, easy to play, fun, really small footprint and components. That one's definitely a bring along. And then Fugitive from Tim Fowers. That's an interesting 2-person deduction game where you're trying to, one person is the fugitive, the other person is the marshal, and you're trying to elude them as they chase you or as you're being chased. So that one might come along as well. So those are 7 games I've picked out. I think if I take most of them out of their boxes, the 8th one I just thought of was Tides of Madness. This is an excellent 2-player game. Easy to teach, easy to play. Jenny has played it before, although it's been a while. So that one might make an appearance as well. It'd be pretty easy to get all of these into a single gallon-sized bag. So I think those are going to be the games that I will bring with me. I have in the past, when I have a little bit more room, brought some other games that have a bit bigger footprint. I found if you take games out of their box and just carefully package up their components and stick them in a Ziploc bag, that the games take up a lot less room than they seem to when they're on your shelves. I mean, I wouldn't want to store my games that way all the time because they don't look nice. And part of a game collection is its shelf appeal, I think. Not that I organize my games well enough to have them have much shelf appeal right now. Anyway, it's kind of a mess down there. But those are the games. So 1, 2, 3 that play really well solo. 1, 2, 3, 4 that play really well as 2-player games. So that's what I'll be bringing with me on my trip. Like I said, we're planning to visit a couple game shops or game cafes while we're in Reykjavik. I've read that there's a couple nice ones. We're not renting a car this time, which is unusual for us. Usually we do, but we're only going to be there 4 days, so I won't have time to get acclimated to driving there, or not as much as like longer trips. We also, our trip is heavily focused on day trips. So we've got one hotel we're staying at the whole time, which isn't usually what we do. And then we're doing a couple tours or day trips. The nice thing about that is that usually when we go on a trip like this, I end up driving most of it, just because it's easier for her to navigate and me to drive than the other way. And because I'm driving, especially if I'm driving somewhere scenic, often when something is scenic, it's also a little perilous to drive. So I've been on a number of trips now where we drove for several hours and then we got to the end and I'd seen quick glimpses of beautiful vistas and not gotten to really see them very well. As opposed to when we take a tour where I'm not driving, then I get to look at the beautiful vistas also, and it's much more relaxing and satisfying. So we decided rather than spending the money on car rental this time, we'd spend the money on these tours, and then we'll just stay in Reykjavik for our hotel. So that's kind of our plan for the trip. And like I said, we're going to try to hit a couple game shops. It'd be fun to pick up a couple small box games, something that's easy to bring back in my bag. I really can't pick up, like if I found a Ticket to Ride size game, I can't buy it unless I'm going to pay to have it shipped back, which seems kind of outrageous. So we'll see what I can find. I'm really hoping I'll find a couple games produced by Icelanders, maybe even for Icelanders in Icelandic. That wouldn't be ideal if there's no English rules, but maybe I buy it anyway and see if I can learn how to play it or something. So that's my thinking for the game shop. Well, I have a couple minutes left here, so I thought I would share. I was very pleased recently to get to the table terraforming Mars again, and I yesterday beat the solo game for the first time. I was using the Prelude expansion, which meant that I only had 12 rounds instead of 14. But I barely made it. I had enough money to pay. I finished Oxygen the turn before. I finished the Oceans on the turn of, and I finished the Heat on the turn of. I was able to pay for 4 asteroid steps in the Heat in the final round. That was enough to push the game over the edge and let me win. And I had enough money to pay for one more step if I had needed it. So just barely made it. But so if you haven't played the solo mode, you have to finish all 3 terraforming steps by the time you hit round 14, or round 12 if you're playing with Prelude cards. So now that I've done that first variant, now the next challenge is to do it the alternate Prelude. In Prelude, they introduce an alternate solo mode where instead of trying to get all 3 steps done, you try to get your TR rating up to 65, which I was very close. I think I was at 64 when it was done. So I was very close to that anyway. And I'm sure I could have figured out how if I'd needed to do that instead of the Heat. But that'll be an interesting challenge for next time. And then I'll start introducing the other expansions and changing the win conditions a bit more. So what are your go-to games when you're traveling? How do you like to package up your games, if you bring any at all? Maybe you don't bring games. Let me know in the Board Game Geek Guild 3269 over on Board Game Geek. And until next time, I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.